Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Skills and Abilities. Today, we're going to be looking at some of the Chaos Tree, which is Ring of Fire. So, we're going to start out with this bad boy. Ring of Fire is, I think, going to be a popular one this season, mainly because it's kind of like a fire version of Nova. You know, you've got Nova, we've got Frost Nova, we've got, we've got the lightning version and the cold version, but we never had the fire version until now. So now we have the fire version. And it does have some interesting mechanics to it, so we'll talk about it. Of course, it is a spell, so it is governed by cast speed. It does also incorporate a knockback into the mix, which is rather interesting. And as you can clearly see, as I knock the monster away from me, I can kind of keep them at bay by just simply holding down the button, which is kind of cool. It does have some really good synergies, only 60 points synergy, so 20 for the base skill, 20 for Reflame Wave, and 20 for Apocalypse, with 3 points to actually travel to it. So you're totally talking about 63 points total, and you get access to all the curses, which is not that bad. Once you have it maxed out, it does some pretty significant damage, and it also gets more damage depending on how far away the monster is from the base of where you use the ability. Now these guys are immune to fire, so they're not going to do any damage to them. But as you can see, the knockback effect still works on them regardless. If they take the brunt of the damage from a very close range, that is the lowest possible damage that you can get. And then if they take the brunt from a further away point, because the radius of the ability is actually quite large, you can actually get some pretty significant damage increase per yard, which is kind of neat. Now, the interesting thing about this, of course, is that you can utilize this in combination with the other abilities. You can potentially have Ring of Fire running, and then you can also be using Flame Wave, Ring of Fire together, and you can have both of them casting at the same time. You can, of course, also utilize the very interesting teleport with it as well. So you could be using Blade Warp, and what you could easily do is you could Blade Warp into packs, and then start spamming, and then Blade Warp into another pack, and then start spamming, and so forth and so on. It seems to me like the damage per yard is going to be pretty much given to you for free for the most part, because the knockback. So the knockback is almost always going to push them toward the edge of the field, which is going to end up giving you the higher damage output. It's actually a really interesting ability. There are some interesting things that you can do to support this ability. Going over the ability itself isn't really that amazing. But support-wise, like if you were to try and get the most out of this particular ability, let's go over the various things that you can use to make it better. So first off, you definitely are going to want to get access to this guy right here, which is the Summon Tainted. The Summon Tainted is a fire damage minion, and he can be consumed, which using the consume ability down here, he can be consumed to give you a really nice buff for fire damage. So we're going to go ahead and summon the Summon Tainted, and then I'm going to use the consume ability, and you can see that he gives negative 15% enemy fire resistance and plus 20% fire skill damage, which is really freaking good. There are also some other bind demons if you want to go down far enough to grab the bind demon skill. There are some really good bind demons that can give you some really good negative fire res, as well as some other nice bonuses. And I do have kind of like a thing going over all of them here. So if you were to have a really good consume, this does actually rely on having a good consume, because it varies depending on the level of the consume that you're obviously eating them for. But Bishi Bosch is negative 42% enemy fire res. We also have Pit Spawn Foul Dog is negative 45% enemy fire res. Witch Doctor Ndugu, he's kind of hard to get to, but he's negative 50% fire res. We also have Mayfor Dragon Hand is negative fire res. We also have Galeb Flamefinger is negative fire res. And Infector of Souls is negative fire res, really good negative fire res too. Doc Farron, who's actually pretty easy to get to, is negative 45. Sharptooth Slayer is magic. Kalenzo the Annihilator is enemy fire res. Ventar the Unholy is negative enemy fire res. And I mean, in general, there's a lot of monsters that you can potentially utilize with the consume ability to get the negative fire res that you would need to really make this ability function. Another thing about this ability is that the mana cost is kind of high. You can clearly see here At level 30, oh man, level 36, this is 25.5 mana per cast. And even with 783 mana, you can clearly see that I can burn through that relatively quickly on this character. So it is something that you'll have to pay attention to with Ring of Fire. Very similar, honestly, to Nova and Frost Nova, is that they usually end up costing large amounts of mana. So, I mean, there's that. You can also potentially weave in other abilities with this very easily. So, like, not only can you weave in your Ring of Fire, but you can also weave in your Apocalypse, which is actually a pretty good one. And you can do things like this. Stand in the center of your Apocalypse, get your Apocalypse running, and you can very easily work in all three of the fire abilities. In fact, I don't really see like any of these builds as like only one specific skill, because technically you're going to have access to all three, and they're going to be all fully synergized, and so you're going to get like the massive amount of damage from essentially all of them. Ring of Fire tends to be more on the spammy side, wanting you to cast it in quick succession, so you're going to need large amounts of faster cast rate. Flame Wave kind of has like a hitch in its giddy up, and although cast speed does of course increase the overall like spamming of it, it does kind of have like a delay in the way that it works, and it has like an average damage portion as well as the on hit portion, and then on top of that, like I've noticed sometimes because it's kind of slow and it travels, it seems to be able to hit the target 2 times. Apocalypse seems to be the one that probably works the best with this though, because in my opinion you have the delay on this one, the casting delay of 1.8 seconds, so you can very easily cast your Apocalypse down, spam quite a few Ring of Fires, just put your next Apocalypse down, spam quite a few Ring of Fires, and it works in a pretty good rotation. Um, Apart from the support through the consumability, you could also potentially work into the actual minions themselves, with the defilers being fire. So you could have a full summon setup with this, with the fire bonus. You could also potentially build into Blood Boil, which is also fire damage. And if you're going to be building, say, negative fire resistance, if you're going to be building plus fire skill damage, and maybe even plus the fire skills, there's definitely some interesting synergies here, where you could potentially have like a little army of defilers, or the tainted, which shoot fireballs for some reason, even though technically in the previous, like in the real world, they don't shoot fireballs, they shoot cold. I think it's cold or lightning. So if you had like a bunch of these guys shooting fire as well, could of course do some pretty significant damage through the minions. Or you could potentially just simply, like have like a little pack of goatmen or something just to like support you. Do keep in mind though that if you consume one of your minions for whatever reason, that minion spot is no longer available. So for instance, if I have access right now to 2 max demons and I eat one of my demons, I can no longer have 2 demons out because I have one. My buff essentially is counting as one of the 2 demons, if that makes any sense. I think that's pretty much it. I think a lot of people are going to have fun with this Ring of Fire ability. There are some procking bonuses. Like there is a couple items that actually have a proc for Ring of Fire, which is kind of neat. The knockback effect on it definitely does make it highly defensive because it can push the monsters away from you. Although it's not going to help you with ranged monsters and whatnot that are shooting you from really far away. It definitely functions very well with a teleporting in the middle of groups and then spamming Ring of Fire to make yourself some room. And overall, it's going to be one that I think a lot of people are going to use. In fact, all the fire skills seem to be very fun to use, and that's kind of like the whole thing with building any of these fire skills is you have all 3. So you're going to be able to play with Apocalypse and with Flame Wave and Ring of Fire all at the same time. Tell me what you guys think about Ring of Fire. I'm interested to hear your opinions. As always, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe button if you are enjoying the content, and keep watching.